Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a review of the game Dark and Darker. Now Dark and Darker is essentially just and I quote, an unforgiving hardcore first-person fantasy dungeon adventure. Now, basically what it is it's a PvPvE dive-in adventure where you enter a match and you fight a bunch of creatures that are around you, and you might occasionally have to fight another player. And essentially the goal is to loot while you're inside and then find an XVille while you're there. While you're going through, you can sometimes find, really good loot and really hard monsters as well as deeper floors within the dungeon. That's something that I haven't personally dived super far into, but it is something you can do, is go into these deeper layers and fight these stronger monsters with your party of 3. Dark and Darker is based off a party of 3 players. You can play duos and even singles as well, as the maps randomly roll. But yeah, let's go ahead and just hop right on in. In regards to the balance of the game, I find that it's fairly balanced for the most part. I do find that having armor seems to just be worse than having really good mobility. So being able to essentially just dodge attacks rather than try to tank them or try to block them, I find to be much better. So if you're playing a sword and board character, oftentimes it's better to just run either a dual wielder or two-handed character. And that's with PvP and PvE, really. Because if you're just able to run around and avoid the animations and the attacks, man, you are chilling. Now, in regards to weaponry, I find the axe to be the most deceiving of the weapons. You would think it would have a much better reach to it, but I found it's a close range weapon. Now, that could change over time, but as of the time of playing and recording this, I did notice that when I was running an axe, I would oftentimes swing short and then take a hit, because I was expecting it to have a longer reach. Now, pole arms, on the other hand, like a spear or a halberd, are really, really good. A bardiche even, too. They have great reach, and they do they do a lot of damage, right? Same with the greatsword. The greatsword does a bunch of damage as well. The swords have a really good reach. Like the one-handed swords, the arming sword, for instance, has a really, really good reach. And I thought that was something that's pretty cool. Now, one thing that I do dislike a little bit is the dual wielding system. Only certain weapons can be used in your offhand. So, for instance, you have like a dagger in the offhand or a hatchet on the offhand, which is fine. I just wish you could use any weapon in the offhand. I think that would be cooler, and I feel like that's a great opportunity to add more animations to the combat system. As the combat system is fairly bland, you have the same animations that you swing, and you have the same movement. One thing about this too to keep in mind is there's no sprinting in this game. The only sprint function that you can get is as a fighter, with one of the skills being that you can sprint. And it's only like for 20 seconds, and it's not a huge speed increase, right? Also, carrying no weapons in your hand increases your speed, and having no armor increases your speed, etc., etc. But not having the ability to sprint really feels like the game is really slow paced. And it gives the game, I don't know how exactly to describe it, but it feels slow and kind of sluggish. Now I understand, for balancing reasons and to just make the PvE encounters actually worthwhile, rather than just being able to sprint by them, swing at their back 3 times and end it. So I completely understand why that exists. It's just, I think I would like a speed increase of some sorts, whether that is like a slight jog. I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to integrate a slight speed increase to the game, but that's just my own personal opinion. Let me know down below what you guys think about not having sprint, as well as I mentioned earlier, the PvE mode as well, and how you might want to integrate that. One other thing I want to add in about the combat is the friendly fire, all right? So if you have a wizard behind you throwing down a fireball and it hits the enemy, but it also hits you, you're going to take the damage as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I personally found that, trying to avoid explosions is always best. And swinging at a target from 2 sides is usually better, or from one side. The only issue is when you have big sweeping attacks. you can kind of run into the issue where you hit both your friend and the enemy, which is no good, obviously, because healing in this is kind of crappy, to be honest with you. You don't heal much from the cleric's healing, and you also don't get much from a healing potion or bandages. So that's something to keep in mind. Another aspect, too, that I found slightly confusing is the stats, right? So if you're anyway familiar with any tabletop RPG, it has strength, dexterity, which I think is called agility, vigor, which is just constitution, etc., right? Willpower. So basically they have those, right? And the fighter starts with a 15 and everything, which I thought was an interesting take. The barbarian starts with like 22 strength, which is really, really good. And I understand that they may want to balance it for gear reasons, because gear gives you bonuses to stats. But a lot of the times the strength boosting gear just lowers your movement. And so as a fighter, it can kind of make it rough taking on, that heavy armor that really slows you down. But sure, you do a little bit more damage, but you'll never do as much as a barbarian. So, but anyways, the stats can be slightly confusing. And they don't really describe to you how much they do. Like, based, maybe it gives you 22% more damage if you have 22 strength or whatever. Like, it doesn't really advertise it. Doesn't put it out there for you to understand. So that's just a minor gripe of mine, and I wish it was a little bit clearer about that. But, as the game progresses and gets older and has more following, that'll become more obvious as people will actually break down the numbers. I just never went through and broke it down. I play this game for just casual play and having fun with my friends, But overall, the friendly fire is definitely something to be avoided. The last thing that I want to discuss about Dark and Darker, with all its flaws and bonuses, right, is there's 9 classes in the game. And overall, I think those 9 classes are fairly well balanced. Maybe not in the PvP aspect of things, but definitely in the PvE aspect of things. I personally, my 2 favorite classes is the Fighter and Wizard. Those are my 2 favorites. I've gotten my Fighter all the way up to level 25 at this point, and my Wizard all the way up to almost like level 19 is where I'm at on him. But I personally find it to be fairly balanced in the PvE aspect. I have a couple minor gripes about like the Warlock and how it has to use hit points to cast. I think it's cool. It's a really cool mechanic. However, the healing is so slow and so little that it's kind of detrimental in a pretty big way. So unless you're really packing around a lot of healing potions, you're gonna be hurting for health basically the entire playthrough. Or if you can find like those big health heal ups. So it is what it is. However, there's a couple things. The cleric is fairly good. It's just their healing isn't all that great. I mean, it's good on certain classes because certain classes have better arcane healing rates. However, it's still not that good. The druid's healing, on the other hand, they do have a passive ability that just gives you a minor amount of healing passively, which is fairly good, actually. The druid's kind of tanky, I'm not going to lie to you guys. The druid's pretty cool. I didn't play one personally, but one of my buddies played it, and he had a blast running it. I think he got it all the way up to level 10 or so, and he really enjoyed it. So, to each their own, I suppose. But honestly, the game is fairly well balanced for PvE. I wish magic did a little bit more damage overall, because I feel, if they're going to have limited resources in which they have to rest a long time to get back, there should be some sort of benefit to it, right? Where it just does a bunch of damage and it kills things faster. So, that's just my own personal opinion, though. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think overall of the balance of the classes, which class you enjoyed the most. But yeah, that's my general opinion on the balance of the game. As I mentioned at the start of the video, the general mechanics of the game and how it works is fairly simple, right? You go in, you deploy with your 3 buddies, or your 2 buddies, I apologize, in any corner of the dungeon, right? And you go through, you kill monsters, you loot things, and you extract. Now, there's 3 different ways to extract, right? There's the blue portals that have this little, like, round blue circle on the ground that you can find, and 3 little, like, I guess gravestones with little papers wrapped above them, parchment, I guess. You activate those, After you activate it, you can run through it and you XVille, right? And there's 3 of those at each little stand. Or there's the one-man exits. So the one-man exits are just staircases, right, going up. And when you run out those staircases, you XVille, and no one else can use that exit again. It's one use and done, right? Then the last one is a couple different ways. There's the boat and the elevator. Now, the elevator can fit, I think, up to 7 or 8 people on it, right? And the boat as well can fit about 7 to 8. The first time that we used it, we had 6 people on the boat. And when we used the elevator the second time, we got we got traded on. We had 6 people on it as well. So, and those I believe are multiple use. So the boat comes around in circles. I don't know the exact time. It's either every minute and a half or 2 minutes. And the elevator, I think, is somewhere around the same time frame, right? Oftentimes, the elevator is protected by a big baddie. The boat, less so, but you do have to like parkour onto the boat. You have to jump onto it and time it right. It's not hard to do, but it is something you have to keep in mind. Other than that, though, the XVilles are fairly straightforward. They can be hard to find. Once you learn a little bit of map knowledge, though, you can kind of figure out where it's at. It's not super difficult to figure out where they often spawn. For instance, there's one in the Goblin Caves that always spawns in like the underground water section. And it's really easy to get to. So, in the elevator in the ice place always spawns in the same location. So, as long as you know where the elevator is, you know, you can always go fight that Yeti or even avoid it and activate it and go up, right? But overall, the XVille, I wish was a little bit easier to find. I wish you could make the map either full screen or be able to, you know, have some sort of indication where it's at, right? But in any case, the XVille system is really cool, and I personally really enjoy it. Dark and Darker is a great game to be playing with your friends. For instance, I played, I think, all of the time that I have except for maybe a couple rounds in either duos or trios. And I find the game to be much more enjoyable in a multiplayer scenario where you're playing with friends or even if you find people randomly online. But there is no like random filling of your parties from what I've seen. So if you like have 2 people in your party and you want to play trios, there is no like autofill where they just throw a random single into your party. That doesn't really exist. But I did find that the game is very enjoyable in multiplayer. The couple times I did play it in single player, I feel the game gets much creepier when you're by yourself. Also, I feel like the game isn't balanced super well for just one person. And that's something we can discuss later on. But overall, the multiplayer experience is really fun. The proximity chat is great as well. Sometimes you can find really nice people that are willing to team up and you take on the dungeon as a party of 6, which can be pretty sick. Or you can find groups where, you know, you party up and as you're extracting, you get, you know, destroyed right at the end, right? Where they attack you in like an elevator, for instance. That did happen to us once as well. You know, or you just have people that don't use proximity chat and just attack you on sight, which is an abs. That's completely fine. That's how you can play the game. I have seen critiques, though, of the game, just in general, of like having the ability to not have that PvP aspect of it, which I think is a valid argument. Now, I understand that the community is fairly divided upon this. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, whether there should be a PvE section to the game and how you think it might work. Personally, I think if they added a PvE section to the game, they could divide the gear based on what game mode you're playing, right? And I understand the argument of, you know, you're dividing the player base when you're doing that. However, I think that a large group of the community wants to do just PvE because the PvE experience in the game is actually fairly enjoyable. I enjoy it a lot. I actually find it to be the best part of the game. You know, that's my opinion, my irrelevant opinion, as I would say. But overall, I think adding a PvE mode would benefit the game tremendously. But anyways, overall, multiplayer, top tier, really fun, especially if you can get a group of 3 together. It definitely makes the game a lot more enjoyable. The graphics of Dark and Darker are actually really cool looking. I think they oftentimes get overlooked when you look at Dark and Darker, but the graphics themselves actually look really good. There is a couple things, you know, like the game is really dark, as the name suggests, right? You can easily adjust that by cranking up the brightness. Mind you, I think that's kind of cheating and kind of beating, you know, the purpose of the game. However, I understand why you have that slider. It definitely gives you an advantage having it all the way up, though, 100%. So, my opinion, graphics are great. I love the way it looks. I love the feel of it. All the weapons look really nice and well done. The enemies, they look good. Their animations are a little janky, like their death animations for the goblins are really funny. But it looks cool, right? It's also not very hard to run. I mean, the minimum specs is a 1060 with 3 gigs and a quad core at 3.0 gigahertz, right? And then recommended is 3.6 gigahertz quad core, so it's really light on the CPU, and 16 gigs of RAM with an RX 5600, which is, you know, a very low tier GPU at this point. So if you have any mid to low tier GPU, you can run this game 1080p, probably 100 FPS. I personally am able to run it at 1440p, 180 FPS, like locked, with a 6950 XT GPU and a Ryzen 7 5700X3D CPU, and 32 gigs of RAM. And honestly, it runs smooth. There's no frame drops. There was a couple scenarios where I had big lag spikes, but that seemed to be kind of across the entire server, and less on my front and my buddy's fronts. So it was like everybody was commenting, you know, lag, you know. So, and people were talking in proximity chat, why am I rubber banding everywhere? But anyways, performance is great. It looks amazing. I love the 3 maps and how they're designed. They look amazing. I love the way that the maps re-roll as well for like which one gets solo, doubles, duos, and trios. I think that's really neat on how they have that going. Every 3 minutes it re-rolls to determine where each group of people is going to go. That's really neat, and I think with the addition of more maps in the future, that could be a really cool process to add in. So, graphics, I would rate a 9 out of 10. I want to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. It means a lot. But overall, my opinion of the game is fun. You can play it for free with your friends as of recording, and have all the benefits. You just have one character slot. So try it out for free. Enjoy it. Play it. Get your hours in, and if you like it well enough, then you can go ahead and buy the $30 version. If not, just keep playing it for free. There's no downside. Just keep playing it. So, in my irrelevant opinion, I like the game. I think it's cool. There's a lot of games coming up like this, like Dungeonborn, if you guys are interested. But anyways, thank you guys for making it this far in the videos, and I appreciate you all. Thank you all. Take care.